All right, let's jump right into this. We are looking at a paleontological discovery today that is, honestly, it's going to completely flip what you think you know about one of nature's most famous predators. We're breaking down the science behind an absolute shapeshifter from the Triassic period. Let's get into it.
Okay, so I want you to picture a crocodile. What comes to mind? Probably a massive, sprawling beast, right? Dragging its belly through the mud, all four short legs just churning along the riverbank. That is the classic image. But I want you to completely erase that from your brain for a second. Instead, imagine a creature, a crocodile relative, rearing up on its back legs and just sprinting, like full-on running like a human or an ostrich. I know, it sounds completely absurd, almost like a bad B-movie monster, but this is a real scientifically backed reality that paleontologists have actually uncovered.
So, let's dive into the actual analysis here. When you look at artistic reconstructions of this animal, specifically one called Sonselasuchus cedrus, roaming its ancient habitat, it is wild. They stood totally upright on two legs, using their long, stiff tails to balance themselves out. Now, seeing an animal built exactly like that, your brain immediately screams, "Dinosaur!" right? I mean, the resemblance is literally uncanny.
But get this, despite looking exactly like a small dinosaur, it's not one. Not at all. It's actually a really bizarre, funny kind of crocodile. It's a distant cousin of the reptiles we see today.
And when I say distant, I mean we are talking 215 million years ago. That number drops us smack in the middle of the late Triassic period. This is way before the modern crocodiles we know even existed. The Earth back then was basically this wild evolutionary laboratory. Different animal lineages were just experimenting with these radically diverse body shapes and ways of living.
Let's quickly untangle the family tree here so we know exactly what we're dealing with. Sonselasuchus belongs to the Shuvosaurid family. That's a specific branch under a massive umbrella group of animals called archosaurs. The main takeaway you need to know. On the grand evolutionary tree, this branch connects directly to the one that eventually gives us modern crocodilians. They share common ancestors. But this particular lineage went down a completely different path than the flat, sprawling gators you'd see in the Everglades today.
Now, as cool as that is, the story gets even weirder. The most mind-bending thing about this creature isn't just its adult shape, it's what it actually went through during its own lifetime. As it grew up, it underwent this massive, radical physical transformation, shifting entirely from walking on four legs to just two.
Scientists call this the differential growth model. And it's so fascinating. Recent research led by Elliot Armour Smith laid this all out. Basically, when a Sonselasuchus was a baby, a juvenile, it crawled around on all fours, standard reptile stuff. But as it got older, its body grew unevenly. The hind legs started getting much longer and way thicker than the front ones. So by the time these animals hit adulthood, they completely abandoned the four-legged crawl. They literally learned to stand up and run on two legs for the rest of their lives?
Which brings us to the big question. Why? Why on earth would a crocodile cousin evolve to adopt the exact posture of a running two-legged dinosaur? Well, it all comes down to a really cool biological concept called convergent evolution.
To make sense of it, you got to keep the number 64 in mind. From a physical standpoint, this adult creature wasn't some massive Godzilla. It was only about 64 centimeters tall. And because of that modest size, it occupied a very specific ecological niche. It was sharing its environment with actual, fast-moving dinosaurs that looked a lot like ostriches. If you wanted to survive, hunt, or, not get eaten by predators in that specific setting, you had to be exceptionally fast and agile.
And this is where nature really shows off its problem-solving skills. You have our crocodilian cousin on one side, and these ornithomimid dinosaurs, the famous ostrich dinosaurs, on the other, two totally unrelated families. Yet they ended up with the exact same physical toolkit. We're talking toothless beaks, hollow bones to keep them light and fast, and these massive eye sockets for incredibly sharp vision. They developed all of these traits completely independently of one another.
And that right there is the textbook definition of convergent evolution. Distinct animals independently acquiring similar traits to do the same job. Think of it like this. Imagine two completely different teams of engineers, right? They're in different countries, they never talk to each other, but they are both asked to design the fastest possible vehicle for a very specific type of rough terrain. They're probably going to end up with nearly identical aerodynamic designs, simply because the laws of physics dictate what works best. Nature did the exact same thing here. It used the exact same blueprint on two completely different animals because it was flat out the best way to survive as a lightweight runner in that ecosystem.
Okay, so we know what it looked like and how it evolved, but what about the actual world it lived in?
Let's dig into the secrets of the Triassic environment that shaped such an incredible creature.
You can actually learn a lot just from its scientific name alone, Sonselasuchus cedrus. These fossils were unearthed out in the U.S., in Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park, in a specific geological layer known as the Sonsela Formation. And that second part, cedrus, that literally refers to cedars. So 215 million years ago, this environment wasn't the arid desert you see there today. It was a lush, dense forest just packed with evergreen conifers. It was a vibrant, buzzing habitat perfectly suited for a highly agile reptile.
And I have to point out just how incredibly rich this excavation site is. Since 2014, research teams have pulled over 3,000 bones out of the dirt. Associate Professor Christian Sider, who helped lead these digs, emphasized that this site is an absolute gold mine. Working alongside the National Park Service and tons of volunteers, they aren't just finding our weird two-legged crocodile. They are unearthing an entire ecosystem: fish, amphibians, all sorts of diverse reptiles. Every single bone they pull up refines our picture of this ancient world just a little bit more.
So what is the absolute biggest takeaway from all of this? Well, Sonselasuchus cedrus proves, without a doubt, that evolution is never just a predictable straight line. It is this wild, creative force. I mean, it literally molded a crawling baby crocodile into a running, two-legged adult that mimicked a dinosaur just so it could survive. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. If nature is inventive enough to create bizarre shapeshifters like this, what other unbelievable secrets are still buried right beneath our feet, just waiting for us to dig them up? I'm going to leave you to ponder that one. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and stay curious.